Story of democracy, the struggle of the many to escape the domination by the few. In today's presentation, what I'd like to do is situate the court case in two larger historical narratives. The first being an ideological narrative, the triumph of democracy, and the second is the practice of democracy in regards to political institutions. Here we have Pericles addressing the Agora, and as the caption indicates, the word democracy comes from the root demos, meaning the people, and kratia, which refers to power. And this was a huge development in the history of civilization. It's the first time that we see the many having control over power and the decision-making process, and in fact it's the many taking care of the many. The rise of democracy also corresponds to the golden age of Athens. It's during this period of time where the foundations of Western civilization are laid. We have such intellectual greats like Socrates, Plato, Aristotle leaving their legacy, as well as in literature we have Homer with the Iliad and the Odyssey, and of course if you look to the right we can see Pythagoras starting to teach his theorems. And in fact this age really came about as a result of the liberty of expression that we find with democratic states. The principle of equality becomes embedded in the political institutions of Athens. A harmony exists between the form of the political institution and the predominant values. Here we have the Greek equivalents of the five values that guided Athenian democracy. And as we see in their English equivalents, we're speaking of the equality of political rights, one person, one vote, equal share of political power. The equality of speech, meaning that each and every Athenian citizen had the right to speak before the assembly. Political power, citizens were both willing and able to rule and be ruled. Birthright, there were no extra rights given because of the class in which an individual was born into. And finally, with regard to legal rights, everyone was equal under the law. All good things come to an end, and the golden age in Athens lasted for approximately 150 years until Athens fell to the Macedonians, led by Philip, the father of Alexander the Great. Life before and after the golden age in Athens could be characterized as being nasty, brutish, and short. Governance consisted of divine rule or rule by military force or a combination thereof. This quality of life continued until the Renaissance, where the ancient texts were rediscovered and the knowledge became more available to the population at large. With the invention of the printing press and movable type, the spread of information started to accelerate as never before. Indeed, the dissemination of ideas empowered the masses to escape the oppression of the few, as can be seen in the picture depicting the French Revolution. The French Revolution is extremely important because it is here the concept of democracy re-enters into the consciousness of Western culture, and this time with a positive connotation, as can be found in the expression liberté, égalité, fraternité. On the left, we see Philippe Buonarroti, the Italian expatriate who participated in the French Revolution and wrote an important treatise in which he recognized that at the heart of the French Revolution there was a conflict between two different orders, the order of equality and the order of privilege. In fact, the 20th century can be seen as a lengthy, bloody struggle between the two orders at the level of ideology. Here we have the four great ideologies of the 20th century: fascism, capitalism, communism, and socialism. By the end of the 20th century, it's democracy that triumphs, as can be seen here with the fall of the Berlin Wall. After the end of the Second World War, the order of equality flourishes, civil rights are restored, the medium wage doubles, and unprecedented social programs are put into place. Then democracy spreads across the globe as former colonies of imperialistic orders and the satellite states of the former Soviet Union gain their independence. As can be seen here on the map, the light blue countries are those that are more democratic. However, the marriage of corporate capitalism and representative democracy does not mean that the order of equality has won the day. In fact, we can say that the conflict between the orders shifts from an ideological level to an institutional one. As the late Australian sociologist Alex Carey points out, the 20th century has been characterized by three developments of great political importance: the growth of democracy, the growth of corporate power, and the growth of corporate propaganda as means of protecting corporate power against democracy. Only in appearance does the order of privilege accept the legitimacy of democracy. In reality, as portrayed in the 1979 film The Empire Strikes Back, we can see the two evil henchmen of Darth Vader, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, who were elected months before and after the release of the film. Essentially, what they set out to do is to reestablish the predominance of privilege. At an institutional level, they set out to create the uneven playing field in their favor. At the level of the imagination, the economy replaces the nation, and the myth is propagated that all boats rise on the same tide. With the advances in information and communication technology, territorial control can be circumvented by moving money, people, and ideas around the globe in a worldwide shell game. Trade agreements like NAFTA and the GATT, as well as the creation of the World Bank and the IMF, move economic decisions offshore. And as could be expected, the order of privileges continues to make use of the courts to gain advantage. The order of privilege will continue to take advantage of corporate personhood, a right of corporations to be treated as if they were humans that goes back into the 19th century decision of the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court in Santa Clara County versus the Southern Pacific Railroad. 120 years later, in the infamous Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, the U.S. Supreme Court decides that corporations do indeed have First Amendment rights. Freedom of speech in this case means that they can spend unlimited amounts of money in support of their favored candidates during electoral campaigns in the United States. And voila, the preferred social order, corporate plutocracy. Here, an elite hereditary aristocracy has been now replaced by a corporate elite. Since democracy is founded on the principle of equality, it is here where we must look for our appropriate response. What the English political theorist John Donne says about democracy is important. What the term means is that the people who hold power and exercise rule. This is what the term meant in Athens, where the claim bore some relation to the truth. That is what it means today, when it appears to be a thumping falsehood, a bare-faced lie. Indeed, what we have today is a faux democracy. And as Canadian political scientist Henry Milner points out, when every vote counts and counts equally, politics is much more a reflection of the priorities of the population. In a faux democracy, inequality is rampant. The super-rich capture more and more of the wealth. To maintain the order of privilege, the current economic order must stay in place, even though this means environmental suicide. To escape the widespread inequality found in a faux democracy, we need to fight back and make each and every vote count. Making every vote count is what lies at the heart of our judicial action. Here we find the plaintiffs, myself, Brian Gibb in the upper left corner. Below me is Patrick Daou, and on the right upper hand corner is François Soucy, and below is the last of the plaintiffs, Pierre Verano. Of course, a court action of this nature would never get far without the support of several groups. Here are our major partners, the Green Party of Canada and Fair Vote Canada, who've been recently awarded status as interveners. We also are supported by the Parti Vert du Québec, more recently by Fair Voting British Columbia, and we all began this as members of the Mouvement pour une démocratie nouvelle.